Dear learners, we shall be continuing with our discussion on the topic kinds of business organizations. In this part 8 lecture, we shall be discussing the business organizations of partnership and limited liability partnership and Hindu undivided family. In the previous lectures, we have already undertaken a discussion on some business organizations like a company, corporation, and sole proprietorship. Now, we shall be beginning with a partnership. What is a partnership? So, a partnership is defined as a relation between persons who have agreed to share the profits of a business that are carried on by all or any of them acting for all. So, this is a definition that is given under the Indian Partnership Act 1932, which governs the legal framework of partnership as a business organization. Now, for your convenience, I have identified some key words from this definition. The first is that partnership is essentially a kind of a formal relationship between the owners of a business. So, first is there is a formal relationship. The second is that there is a baseline agreement which is known as a partnership deed. So, there is some contract or an agreement between the partners as to how the business is to be carried on, how the profits and losses have to be distributed, how the responsibilities in the business they have to be shared. The third is that the business should be carried on. So there should not be only a single activity of buying or selling, but there should be a series of activities. So the business is associated with the partnership firm and it should be a continuity in the business which is done by the firm. The fourth is that there is an element of revenue or profit sharing in whatever the proceeds are of the operation of the businesses. And fifthly, there is the aspect of mutual agency. Mutual agency essentially means that partners, while acting as partners or owners of the business, they have the capacity to bind some their fellow or co-partners in the business. This is known as mutual agency, where the partners bind the partnership firm as also their co-partners in the business. Now, just to give you an example of a partnership firm, so let us assume that there are two persons. Their names are Brown and Green. They are lawyers who run a legal consultancy together under the name Brown and Green Attorneys at Law. Now, individually, the partners are Brown and Green. The partnership firm is known as Brown and Green collectively. The name of the firm is Brown and Green Attorneys at Law. So this is how a partnership firm looks like with individual partners. What is a firm? That is a conglomeration of the various partners, and then the firm name. Now, the legal framework of the partnership is contained under the Indian Partnership Act 1932, which is the principal legislation regulating partnership as a kind of a business organization. But there is a very strong influence of the contract law on partnership because the basis of all partnership is an agreement, and all agreement is subject to regulation under the contract law. So we say that the legal framework of the partnership business is the Partnership Act, which is a legislative law, as well as the contract law. Now, the structure of a partnership firm is very unlike that of a proprietorship, where there is a single person. Here you have multiple owners of a business. Each of these owners is known as a partner. So essentially, the ownership of a partnership business is plural, whereas in case of proprietorship, it is singular. So in that sense, insofar as the structure of owners is concerned, it is somewhat resembles that of a company where there are multiple shareholders. In the same way, in a partnership firm, there could be multiple partners. Now, the legal personality of a partnership firm is not separate from its partners. So, in that sense, it very closely resembles with that of a proprietorship. Again, where the proprietorship does not have a separate legal personality from the proprietor. And here it is very different with that of a company because a company has a separate legal personality. Now, in a partnership firm, the liability of the partners is unlimited liability, meaning thereby their personal assets are not protected from the business creditors of the partnership firm. So if the partnership business falls into financial distress or trouble and its debts are more and its assets are less, then the business creditors of the partnership firm can lay a claim on the personal assets of the individual partners. So they remain exposed to a greater risk, just like in case of a proprietorship, but not in case of a company which has limited liability. So this aspect of owner shielding is not present in a partnership business. Now the governance of a partnership business is carried on in accordance with a partnership deed, whereas in case of a company, for example, it is done like in with the help of memorandum of association and articles of association. So there is an agreement between the partners as to how the governance of the business has to be done. Now we will discuss partnership in more detail in some of the other lectures. So we have an entirely separate model for partnership business. Now partnership as a business organization, some aspects we have explained here, but we will be going into much greater detail inside the Indian Partnership Act 1932 in a module that is to be taken in a separate week. Next we come to limited liability partnership, again which is a kind of an extension of the partnership as a kind of a business organization with minor variation that there is a limited liability option which is available. Now what are the features of a limited liability partnership? The legal framework of the limited liability partnership again is the legislative framework that is provided under the Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008. So the legislation that governs limited liability partnership is relatively modern and new as compared to that of a partnership, which is the Partnership Act 1932. So this structure was introduced in India in the year 2008 under this act. Now the LLP is called a hybrid between a company and a partnership as it contains elements of both a kind of a corporate structure as well as a partnership firm structure. Now LLP is a kind of a hybrid or an alternate corporate business form that gives the benefits of limited liability of a company and the flexibility of a partnership. Now as the name suggests, the liability of the partners is limited to their agreed contribution in this LLP. The LLP is a separate legal entity which is capable of entering contracts into its own name and holding property in its own name. Further, no partner is liable on account of the independent or unauthorized actions of other partners. Thus, individual partners are shielded from joint liability which are created by another partner's wrongful business decisions or misconduct. The mutual rights and duties of the partners within an LLP, they are governed by an agreement between the partners. So as we can see that there are some similarities of an LLP with a partnership firm, and there are some similarities between an LLP and a company. In the same way, there are dissimilarities between an LLP and a company and LLP and a partnership. So for example, the aspects of separate legal personality and limited liability, they closely resemble with the corporate form. but that regard to the contractual dimensions of an LLP, they are more closely aligned with the partnership business. Now, one caveat that I would like to put here is that while we have discussed some introductory aspects of the LLP as a kind of a business organization in this lecture, but we have a separate module which is covered in an entire week for a limited liability partnership. In that module, we shall be going into the detailed provisions and nitty-gritties of the Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008 that governs the legal framework of limited liability partnership. The next kind of a business organization that we are going to discuss is a Hindu undivided family, the acronym of which is HUF. Now, in the kinds of business organization, the first lecture we have already had a bird's eye view of what an HUF is. Now, a Hindu undivided or Hindu united family, HUF, is a very unique business structure which is something exclusive to in India. It is a traditional type of business structure which is governed by personal laws of Hindus, especially the Hindu Succession Act 1956. As such, it is rooted in Hindu family customs and traditions. It has been in existence for generations. It is owned and operated jointly by the members of Hindu undivided family. So the legal framework of an HUF is governed by the Hindu law and Hindu Succession Act 1956. So Hindus, Buddhists, Jains and Sikhs, they can form the HUF. The HUF consists of all persons who directly descend from a common ancestor. So the membership in the business is based on birth in the family, allowing consecutive generations to be a part of the business. It is characterized by joint ownership and management of family assets, including businesses. So the membership that is acquired in an HUF is by the status of being born in a particular family and not through a contract. So for example, under the partnership and limited liability partnership, you get to be a member of the business by entering into a partnership deed or a contract with other partners. So this contractual element is not that influential in an HUF as compared to a partnership or a limited liability partnership. The members of the HUF business are called as co-partners, less like in proprietorship business it is called as a proprietor. In a company, the members are called as shareholders. In a partnership firm, they are known as partners. Now these co-partners who are members of an HUF, they are related to each other and to the head of the family, who is known as a karta. In case of a partnership, it is known as a managing partner. Now the karta or the head of the family, he possesses the highest authority and is responsible for managing the entire business and makes the final decisions. Generally, the eldest member of the family takes the position of the karta. Now, the HUF may contain many members, including members within generations, including the head of the family or a karta. All the members are called as co-partners. A Hindu co-partnery includes those persons who acquire an interest in the joint family property by virtue of being born in a family. Now, the HUF usually has assets which come as ancestral property or acquired from a gift, will, or the sale of joint family property, or property that is contributed to the common pool by members of the HUF. The structure of an HUF is that it has a separate legal personality and has limited liability. So in that respect, it resembles a corporate form and somewhat different from partnership and sole proprietorship. Now we shall be undertaking a discussion of HUF with a company. Now the formation of a company, as we have already discussed, is under the Companies Act, whereas HUF is a family business. So the source of and HUF is the family traditions and culture. The legal framework is given under the Companies Act 2013 of a company and that of an HUF under the Hindu Succession Act 1956 and also some provisions of the Income Tax Act. The governance of a company is undertaken through the memorandum and articles of association, whereas an HUF, there is a family deed which governs the relationship between the family members. The assets of a company are generally emerged from the contribution by various members or their capital, whereas an HUF through ancestral property or joint family property. So as you can see here, the base of an HUF does remain the family and interfamily relationships. Now the membership in a company is got through subscription by shares and they are known as members or shareholders, whereas in an HUF they are known as co-partners. And membership acquisition in an HUF is by virtue of being birthed in a family, that is through a status. So the membership diversity in a company is very heterogeneous, so people from all walks of life, all economic backgrounds, all professional backgrounds, they could be members of large public companies. Whereas in an HUF, generally because this is a family dominated business, so it is regarded as homogeneous because people only from a single family. Now a company has independent legal personality and an HUF also has an independent legal personality, so there is a similarity here. So the property is owned by the company and the property of an HUF is also owned by a Hindu undivided family. So in a company there is a perpetual succession, like the life of a company is delinked from its members, and in case of an HUF also there are aspects of perpetual succession because the business of an HUF can be inherited by new members who are born in a family. So if somebody dies, they all naturally exit the business, and somebody who is born, they inherit the business. So this degree of continuity from inheritance is present in an HUF. Now the liability of a company may be limited or unlimited, depends upon the choice which the promoters or the founders make. Whereas in case of an HUF, largely there is limited liability except that of a Karta who has unlimited liability. So this Karta exception is made because he is the most powerful person having the most authority, and therefore limited liability is there only for other members who have less authority, but for the Karta there is unlimited liability. The management ownership is divided between the stakeholders in a company who have different set of managers and a different set of owners, whereas in case of an HUF there is a degree of convergence between the managers and the owners. Whereas the authority of a company is concerned, there is a different set of board of directors who are not members of a company, but in case of an HUF the Karta has all the authority. So with this we would close this lecture. So far we have discussed the legal framework governing a partnership, limited liability partnership, and a Hindu undivided family, that is an HUF. We have discussed their features, some advantages and disadvantages, and also their differentiation with the company. So with this we close this lecture on the kinds of business organization. We shall be taking up some other business organization in the subsequent lectures. Thank you.